All right, let's look at the definition of trig ratios. Right. So if the angle, measure of the angle A is less than between 0 and 90, right, then we could form a right triangle. So this is angle A, right? Then we can define sine of angle A, or probably it's simpler to just say sine of A is defined to be, right, sine. So sine is going to, sine start from S, so cursive S. So we know that it's opposite over hypotenuse, right? So in this case, opposite is A over hypotenuse is C, right? So maybe I'll do that. Opposite over hypotenuse, right? And cosine of A, right? So C, like this, involves adjacent and hypotenuse. So it's going to be adjacent is B over hypotenuse is C. So adjacent over hypotenuse, right? And the tangent of A is going to be, right, tangent stuff from with the letter T. So you can see that it's going to be opposite over adjacent. So it's going to be A over B, which is the opposite over adjacent. All right. So those are the trig ratios, and as you can see, you can use trig identity. I mean the Pythagorean theorem, which says A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. Right. Then by divide everyone through by, say, C squared. So divide C squared and C squared. And you can see that A over C is a sine squared. So this will give you familiar trig identity, sine squared of A plus B over C is cosine, so it's a square, so it's a cosine squared of A is equal to C squared over C squared is 1. So we can get that trig identity there. All right. The problem with this would be if the angle is between 90 and 180, we wouldn't be able to form a right triangle, right? So we have to have some other way to define it. So if the angle is that, so say too big, I say sine of A, when angle is too big, we can define it as sine of 180 minus angle A, right? So instead of using angle A, we're using this angle to form a triangle. So we have right triangle. So here's the right triangle. Then we can just use, use this triangle and use the sine definition here to define this, right? Cosine of A is defined similarly, but except that is going to be a negative sign, right? So we have a cosine of 180 minus A, right? So that's how we define sine, sine and cosine using angle between 90 and 180. Oh, by the way, tangent of A is the same thing as sine of A over cosine of A, right? All right, so what's left to do is what if, what would be the value of sine of 0, cosine of 0, or sine of 90, or cosine of 90, or sine of 180, and the cosine of 180? So let's define those separately. So if you want to define sine of 0 and the sine of 90, and the sine of 180, and at the same time cosine of 0 and cosine of 90 and the cosine of 180, right? So these are defined to be, sine of 0 is defined to be 0, sine of 90 defined to be 1, sine of 180 is 0, right? Cosine of 0 is defined to be 1, cosine of 90 is 0, and cosine of 180 is defined to be -1. Right? So this way, the sine trig ratios are defined for angles between 0 and all the way through 180. Right? That's it. I hope that this was clear.